Hey guys, how's it going? Paul Harris here, welcome back to another one of my videos. Today we're talking about something different. We're talking about the cost of having children. Okay, I usually talk about stocks and shares and other career-based stuff, but I'm also a dad and my child's 6 months old at the moment, and because I talk about money and other type of money things, I thought it'd be interesting to break down how much it actually costs within the first 2 years having a child. Now, I know there's a causality between people getting richer and people having less children. Now, I don't know if that's directly related. I don't know if people think about the costs associated with having a child and make that as a decision of whether they should have children. That's quite an interesting question in and itself. I think people decide how many children they have based on their overall life goal and where they picture their life going and the sort of image they have for their life, other than, you know, can they afford it? But if you do think about whether you can afford it or not, this video should be you. I'm going to go over generally how much it costs over the first 2 years of having a child. That's what we're talking about today. Hopefully you find it interesting. If you do, subscribe to my channel, like this video. Let's get into it. So to think about how much it costs to actually have a child, you actually have to take a step back and not consider the cost once the child's born. There's obviously a lot of costs that come prior to having a child. Now, I didn't have to go down the IVF route, but if you do have to go down the IVF route to have a child, well, that can cost you anywhere from £3,000 every time you want to make an attempt to do it. Now, if you live in the UK, the NHS will pay up to, say, 2 times for you to try and have a child without going down this route. There's obviously a long waiting list to do that, and it based on where you actually live. It's a bit of a postcode lottery in terms of how many times you actually get the option to do that kind of route. There's also cheaper options called IUI, I think it's called, which offers you the opportunity, a 10% chance that you can have a child, and that costs £1,000. So even starting to think about having a child, you might have to start spending the big bucks to do so. Another interesting thing is once you are pregnant, just as a comparison between UK and US, I've actually read that it can cost anywhere up to, say, £32,000 to even have the child born in a hospital because of all the medical expenses that come with it in the US. So in the UK, it's actually free, obviously, unless you go private. But just think about that in terms of opportunity costs there. You living in the UK are saving yourself a big amount of money by having the NHS. So those are 2 costs, but 2 costs I'm not actually going to factor into this calculation. Now, all the other costs that I'm going to factor in are generally costs that I've incurred and understand about. Now, there's obviously cheaper options, and you can go on Free Cycle and you can go on other different sites and get stuff for free. I'm not assuming that, because I'm just going to put in here what the costs are generally of these different products to give a better picture of how much it could cost, because some people might not be fortunate enough to have people give them stuff, and let's just assume you can't be bothered to go and try and get things for free. So also, because it's your child, you generally, you know, safety aspects, a lot of things you kind of want to buy first hand so that you know that it's like got a warranty and all the rest of it, so you wouldn't want to risk that kind of stuff. So I'm going to factor in those costs. Another cost that I'm going to factor in is you know, not necessarily a cost you spend, but a cost that is like a lost wage once you have a child and you go down to paternity leave or maternity leave. And I'm going to assume for this example that you're earning you and your partner is earning £40,000 each. Okay, so obviously if you earn more and you go down to maternity leave, you're going to have more lost income as a result. So that's just some assumptions there. So where do you get started? Well, let's take a step back. The child's not even born yet. You're going to have to actually set up the nursery for him. You're going to have to buy all the stuff, him or her, buy all the stuff that is going to be needed for when the child arrives. So immediately you have things like a cot. Okay, this could cost, say, around £300, and that's like a cot that can transfer into a bed afterwards. Again, There's obviously cheaper versions, there's obviously more expensive versions. This is more in line with the sort of cost that I paid, actually. Buggy and car seat. So you get combinations of these, but this can cost around £1,000, okay? So you can get them for 700 or whatever, but let's say it just costs around £1,000. Then you have, let's say, the paint. You want to decorate the nursery, say that could cost £50. You have all the cupboards and all the places you want to put like the drawers and things for their room. That can cost £200. You have like a chair that you might want to put, like a rocking chair, or a chair that you want to actually have with the child in that room so you can hold the child at night. That can cost £150. You then have baby chairs, so the chairs that the baby sits in, that's £150. You have things like beakers and things that you use to feed the child. That can cost £50. And I've put as £100. So that's just like a very basic, get yourself started. That's how much it's going to set you back. So how much is that? That already is about £2,000, so £1,900. And that's just a cost prior to having the child, okay? Then I've set it up like a list here, which I'm working through because I'm an accountant, so everything needs to be shown as like a general ledger. So, okay, so next you have lost wages. Now, how do you factor this in? Well, you have to think about how much your actual company is providing you in maternity pay. So, a typical example, my wife's a teacher, so her maternity leave was paid as such. So you get 90% of your salary in the first 2 months of your maternity leave. You then get 50% of your salary for the remaining 6 months, and then the rest of the time you get statutory pay. Okay, so you can get, and that's up to like a year. So if you're assuming that you get paid £40,000, after tax that's £2,600 each month coming through as your paychecks, that's cash you actually earn. 90% of that is £2,300. Then 50% of that would be £1,300. Then it goes down to statutory, which is around £650 a month. Okay, so that's how much money you can sort of expect to be coming through as your statutory pay. Well, obviously you were earning £2,600. So lost wages, you know, if it goes down to 90%, you're losing £260 a month. If it goes down to 50%, you're losing £1,300 a month. When it goes down to statutory pay, it goes down to, you're losing close to £2,000 every month in statutory pay. So quite a lot of money. Then you have paternity leave. Now, paternity leave, the companies are only legally required to pay you 1 week of paternity leave. So 1 week, but you're allowed to get, they have to give you 2 weeks, but the second week might just be unpaid leave or statutory pay. So so say that you and your partner are both earning £40,000. 1 week of lost pay is around £650 lost. Okay, so in lost wages within the first year of having that child is £18,000. That's how much you lose having a child. Then you have a load of costs that are incurred every single month once you've had the child, okay? So these are things like nappies, clothes. You might say, well, why do you buy clothes every month? You'd be amazed how quickly they grow out of clothes and bibs and all the rest of it. So nappies, I've said £40 a month. Honestly, it costs a lot to have nappies. Like, they go through hundreds a month, it seems like, particularly when they're younger. Probably less when they're older, so maybe what I could do is lower this. No, I'm going to keep it at 40, whatever. So £40, so about 480 quid could spend on nappies. You have clothes, which I've said £30 a month. Obviously, you can get cheaper kinds. Obviously, with nappies, you can get reusable nappies. Don't like the thought of putting a nappy in the washing machine. Freaks me out, okay? Don't like the idea of doing that. It's a bit icky, yeah? So I'm saying these are throwaway nappies. Bad for the environment, I know, not great. Clothes. Obviously, you can get cheaper clothes. You could go to cheaper stores, Primark. But still, you're going to have to buy new outfits, new clothes. They spill stuff, they stain stuff. Depends how much you're prepared to go out with your kid with them wearing dirty clothes. But let's say £30 a month. That's £360 a year. Formula. Now, this is a lot based on whether you're breastfeeding or not. But saying that you aren't, I've put it here that you aren't, or you're mixing it up, you're not always breastfeeding. I've said here that it's lowering in cost as the year goes on, because at the start you're going to be using more formula, but then as the... and this might be too low. We didn't really use formula, because obviously if you're breastfeeding you don't need to. But if you are using formula, it might be more than this. But I've said it sort of peters off as you start giving the child more solid foods. So overall, that's about £165. Then you have toys. Now, obviously, this is completely variable based on what you're prepared to spend. But let's say you spend about £180 on toys that year. Now, that might sound expensive, but let's just say that, you know, like one of these bouncing... I'll put a picture up, actually. It's like one of these bouncy... things that the child sits in and bounces up and down. Those are like 40 quid. Like, saying £180 spend on toys is actually not that much. And I haven't put books here. I should have put books here. Let's put books. Let's look up this to £25 and say that books are included in here. Books are honestly 20 quid. Could be 15 quid per book. So, you know, what is this? £300 on toys and books. It's expensive. Then you have baby food. So I've said this in the last 6 months of the first year. So let's say that comes to £175. Now that could be a proportion of the amount of money you spend on groceries or otherwise. Then I've said, so that's sort of the first year of spend. And if you factor that in with lost wages, in the first year you're spending close to £20,000, you know? Because, you know, like, I've read a lot of articles this year about how people have saved so much money. I think, like, globally, people have saved close to, like, $5 trillion, which is probably partly due to central banks giving everyone loads of money. But that's propped it up. You know, if you look at some, I've seen other graphs that show, like, the split of wealthier to poorer people in society, and obviously the poorer people and employed, you know, students, they're the ones who've been hit hardest because they haven't been able to save anything. They obviously don't have a house yet. If there's inflation, house prices will rise. So they haven't been able to save anything. They've been hit hardest. But everyone from like middle income onwards has been able to save almost like twice what they usually would save because they're not traveling to work. Other sort of support payments that they otherwise would need to spend on something, let's say like entertainment, they're not spending it now. So a lot of people have been able to save twice what they would usually have saved. That is definitely, having a child through COVID is definitely not, you know, I've benefited, obviously, because I haven't been hit as hard because I'm not spending on other things, but definitely haven't saved very much, that's for sure. So, 19,000. Then another cost you need to factor in going forward then is how much money you're losing based on if you or your partner goes down to part-time. So let's assume you're still getting paid £2,600 in a year's time because you've come back from paternity leave or maternity leave. Then you want to drop down to 4 days a week. Well, you lose effectively £520 each month if you decide to take, you know, 4 days off, because it's almost taking off a week, isn't it, of that month. So you lose about £520 a month by going down to 4 days a week. Then if you're paying for nursery, so nursery can cost £85, from where I'm around, £85 a day. Okay, so that's equivalent to a David Lloyd's membership every single day. Now, I used to be someone who thought, I don't want to get David Lloyd's, that's too expensive. But actually, when you have a child, you pay that every day they go to nursery. And in the nursery I go to, they had the cheek of making me pay a deposit that I don't get back for securing a place at that nursery. And that cost 100 quid, which I haven't factored in here, but that was a joke. But anyway, very expensive. 3 times a week, let's say, that you take your child to nursery. Roughly, you're paying an extra £1,000 every month to send your child to nursery. Now, my wife's a teacher, but nurseries often don't offer term time contracts, so that's an extra £1,000 on top of potentially lost income. Obviously if you have grandparents and people who couldn't support, that saves you a huge amount of money over the long term. But it basically is like a second mortgage. Now, I haven't even factored in the fact that you have to pay other costs of living and stuff. But and then what I've assumed is that the cost profile for, say, formula, clothes, toys and everything goes down. So if you summarize this, you can see how it sort of looks as a monthly profile. It sort of starts very high. So you have here other costs, nursery and lost wages. So in terms of other costs, you start very high and then it just sort of flat phases throughout the whole process of the first 2 years. Then you have lost wages, which obviously spike in January because both of you are off and you might have to take unpaid leave, both people. Then you then it sort of flatlines, but then as you're you know, through the year, as you start to wean off your full pay and go to statutory pay, you obviously lose a lot. That then flatlines. Let's say that you want to go down to 4 days a week. Then on the orange line, you can see nursery obviously doesn't start until, say, one of your parents goes back to work, so that then starts to creep up. So overall, you have, in the first 2.5 years, roughly, you lose wages of about £24,300. You have nursery expenses that are about £12,200 that hit in year 2. If I was being really technical, you could discount that by, you know, 8% or something and say that's the cost up front, but we're not doing present value here. And then other costs, £4,200. That's probably more variable, right? All this is quite variable depending on how much you actually earn, but say that other cost could probably be flexed. And you see here in 2022, I've taken 70% of the previous year's other costs, assuming that you don't have to use formula as much, assuming that you don't have as many nappies, but you're still buying things like toys and all the rest of it. So it'd be £1,000 in 2022. That's it! Imagine if you lived in the US though, add £32,000 on top of that. Then if you happen to go down the IVF route, could have to do it 3 times, add an extra 10 grand onto that. Children in the first few years cost a lot. Now, the reason I only done it 3 years, or 2.5 years, is because when they go to school, which seems like the holy grail of cost saving now, because you don't have to pay for nursery and you can both work full time, that obviously saves you a huge amount of money. You know, you're saving, when the child goes to school, £18,000. So if you're worried about how much your taxes are and whether you get value, have a child and then send them to school. That'll get your taxes back. Then you'll get your money's worth. Have a child in general. I mean, you're saving £32,000 in medical bills compared to the US. There we are. Hope you enjoyed that. Different video today. I didn't even realise it cost that much. I don't know if that's a nice feeling or a negative feeling now I have a child and realise that. But might be a factor of why people don't have more children. You know, imagine if you had twins. I think nurseries give you a 5% discount for sending your second child to the same nursery. Goodness me, what would I do? Have to move to a smaller house. See you later. Bye bye. Hope you enjoyed that. Bye bye. Bye bye. Subscribe. Bye.